Welcome to Mums Get Fit Retreat, how to get your body back and feel sexy after kids. This is the free online event specifically for the busy mum who wants to lose weight, tone up and feel confident in herself and her body by eating better, working out and working on her mindset. I am your host, Jessica Marie. And today I have a very special guest with us, Kim Vopni, aka the Vagina Coach, who is a Kegel maven. She's a certified fitness professional, and she also certifies other fitness professionals who work closely with women who have core and pelvic floor challenges. And she does this with her specialist certifications. Kim is a mum of two, and she became passionate about spreading information on pelvic health after a second child. She's a women's health educator, best-selling author, and owns her own company, Pelvic Wellness, Inc., which offers pelvic health programs, products, and coaching for women in pregnancy, motherhood, and menopause. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the lovely introduction. It's nice to be here.
You're so welcome. So tell us, Kim, a bit about your journey, where you started, and why you do what you do.
So, I guess I could go all the way back to 6th grade where I saw a childbirth video and sort of had fear implanted in my brain, thinking it was never something that I was going to do. And then fast forward to when I decided I did want to start a family, I was determined to have a different story than my mom. And I knew she had tearing, she had some incontinence issues, she had chronic back pain. And so I was really determined to be as proactive as I possibly could. And there was a product that I had used called the Epino. And it is a biofeedback device that helps people train their pelvic floor. And after I had really a positive birth experience, I feel like that product contributed to it. And I asked the company, it's a German company, I asked them to become a distributor in Canada. So that's kind of how it started. And it was meant to be really just a side gig, but it turned into a business in 2009. And I started to incorporate the e-commerce store that I had with also online services and in-person services for pregnant people, new moms, and combining my background in fitness and also my training as a doula to help women prepare their bodies specifically for birth and then also optimize their recovery. And I had formed a second business called Bellies Inc., which was, we manufactured a postpartum recovery wrap and created an exercise program specifically for retraining the core after birth, recognizing the fact that in North America, at least, we really overlook the need to recover. And our belief was that we needed to retrain the core and pelvic floor to prevent things like incontinence and organ prolapse going forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you with the whole recovery in general. It's just a really big thing and it does seem to take time. So what would you say are the common signs that your pelvic floor might need some help?
The most common would be leaking, I guess I would say, was the one that most people associate with a pelvic floor challenge. So incontinence, where urine leaks out of the body when you don't want it to. And there can be stress urinary incontinence, which is where you may laugh, cough, sneeze, jump, lift a weight, lift your baby, lift a child, and a little bit of urine leaks out. And that is one form. The other form commonly is urge incontinence, where you'll be going about your day and then all of a sudden you get a very overwhelming urge and feel like you can't make it to the bathroom in time. You can also maybe have a sensation of you need to go to the bathroom all the time. You're frequently going to the bathroom, and some people self-diagnose themselves as having overactive bladder. Some people, don't associate it with pelvic floor challenges, but low back pain is very closely tied to pelvic floor. Any sort of hip pain, even knee pain, pelvic girdle pain, so pain in the tailbone or pain in the pubic joint could be associated with the pelvic floor. Pain with sex, any sensation of feeling like there's something in the vagina. So some people say, like sometimes I feel like I'm sitting on a ball, or sometimes when I'm having sex with my male partner, it feels like that he's hitting something, or maybe they even see or feel a bulge right at the entrance to the vagina. So those would be kind of the more common symptoms. But sometimes people may just feel vulnerable. They may just feel, if they're doing a specific fitness activity, they may not feel as powerful, or they may not feel as confident in performing that movement as they used to. And sometimes that can be a sign that maybe the pelvic floor isn't working as optimally as it could. The pelvic floor is the foundation of the core, and that is a huge source of our power.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. After having my child, it kind of felt like my core wasn't connected to the rest of my body. Like it really felt like a missing link,
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that a lot.
a weak link.
Yeah.
So when does weakness and tightness overlap? Like, can this be a common occurrence?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, because a lot of people who may have those sensations of feeling vulnerable, or they may say, I have a weak core, people interpret weakness as laxity or not having a lot of tone. And sometimes they think then, okay, I need to strengthen, or I need to build up, some hypertrophy, if you want to bring in a fitness term, where we want to bulk the muscle. But sometimes we may have more tone in the muscle than would be considered optimal. And when we have more tone or more tension, that can interfere with the muscle's ability to react in time, or to react with enough power for, for instance, closing off openings if we are laughing, coughing, sneezing, jumping, that type of thing. So closing off openings where something may leak out of us. And so working on restoring balance in the range of motion of a muscle, just like any other part of our body, if we're holding a lot of tension, like shoulder tension and neck tension is very chronic as well. So if we have muscles that are we're constantly in this position because we're either sitting, or maybe we're cold, or maybe we're stressed out over time. So we have tension that can contribute to discomfort, but we also have this adaptation of shortening and holding on to more tension, or being held in kind of a stuck position that then interferes with that range of motion. So really it should be down here. And then if I wanted to take it through the range of motion, or if it was my arm, this would be my range of motion. But if I'm constantly holding it here, I'm going to get a tired muscle, an achy muscle. And I also have used up some of my power generation. So I don't have as much power or force left. And that's how we can have weakness that's a result of tightness, if that makes sense. So tight
Absolutely.
doesn't equal strength.
Yeah. So if you are in a situation like this, how would you, which one would you try to correct first? Or can you do it both together?
Yeah. So a lot of people will say, I've been told not to do Kegel exercises because I have a tight pelvic floor. And while I agree that we may not want to focus so much on the contract and lift portion of a Kegel exercise, I don't believe we should completely eliminate the movement. So a Kegel exercise is, if you can imagine this as the pelvic floor muscles, there's a sort of closure that happens. So there's a drawing together of the 4 points. So pubic joint, two sit bones, tailbone makes like a diamond shape. So there's kind of a closure that happens. And then there's a gentle lift that happens. And then there's a release. So those are kind of the components of a Kegel exercise. Some people may need to work more on the closure. Some people may need to work more on the lift. Some people may need to work more on the letting go. But as I said earlier, I don't believe that just because this is the phase that we need to work on, it doesn't mean that we don't benefit from this as well. So what I recommend is somebody who's dealing with that. First of all, hands down, first thing I always recommend is see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. And this is, even if you have no symptoms, if you own a vagina, I believe that you would benefit from seeing a pelvic floor physio, but especially if you do have some symptoms or feeling like things just aren't quite right. They can help evaluate your capacity to do a Kegel exercise and then tell you what aspect you need maybe more work on. And if it is more focused on that relaxation, then what I might do is, say in a series of 10 Kegels, I would have them do, I call it a blossom breath sometimes. So inhale and imagine blossoming your vulva or expanding your pelvic floor, and then practice exhaling and just keeping that space open. And they would do that for maybe 3 repetitions. And then on the 4th repetition, they would inhale, expand, and then they would exhale, and they would take that muscle through that contract and lift, and then back to that let go. And then they would do another few blossom breaths where they would keep the space open, and then they would do another contract and lift. And then over time, they start to add in now 3 of those into a set of 10, and then 4 into a set of 10. And then eventually they're back doing that full 10 in that full range of motion and not necessarily having to focus just on the relaxation. And then the other piece that I would have them focus on posture, make sure that they're also spending time releasing other areas that may be tense. So short hamstrings is very common, tension in the posterior part of the pelvic floor and into the glutes. So releasing tension there. So combining that with that kind of blossom breath Kegel work, but also strategies that help release tension and lengthen muscles that surround the pelvis as well.
Yeah. So it's like another skill to learn entirely.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So what would your advice be to somebody who is having some sort of dysfunction with their pelvic floor? Should they still exercise?
1,000%. So first thing, as I said earlier, highly, highly recommend that you see a pelvic floor physiotherapist if you have access to one.
Yeah.
If you don't have access to one, whether it's geographical, whether it's financial, whether, many reasons why people may not be able to see a pelvic floor physio, there are resources online where you can learn from a visualization perspective. So I have a video called The Core Breath, which kind of walks you through that movement of the pelvic floor. So that's your first step. You want to be able to connect to the part of the body that we want to access. We want to access the capacity and power and movement available through that part of the body. So we have to connect mind body, and we start to, learn how we coordinate that muscle group with our breath, and then take it into movement. So then I start adding it into layers of movement, like a bridge exercise, a pelvic tilt, a squat, all sorts of different movements that we may do in the gym per se, or in a workout. And then we can start to then progressively load it. So initially it's connect with the breath, connect with the pelvic floor, start to add in movement that's just body weight or just kind of passive movement. And then we would start to load it. So it's like the principles of any type of fitness. We want to start at a level that's accessible to us. And then we start to add challenge where our muscles adapt, and eventually we can go faster, we can go farther, we can go longer, we can lift heavier, whatever our goals may be. But movement is so key for so many aspects of our whole body. We benefit from a variety of movement. And the challenge with pelvic floor dysfunction is a lot of people are afraid to move. They're afraid to leak. They're afraid that their situation will get worse. If they have prolapse, they're afraid that something's going to fall out, and they feel very guarded. And so they'll start to avoid movement, thinking that they're being protective. But that can lead to atrophy and actually further exacerbation of the problems. These are muscles that benefit from strengthening and building up their suppleness and resiliency, and sitting around doing nothing and avoiding exercise will not contribute to our long-term pelvic floor function.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. What about running though? Because a lot of mums tend to want to run, or they want to do park run or things like that. And that can be quite high impact.
Yeah. So running is, there's lots of debate with regards to high intensity exercise, running being one of them, heavy lifting being another one. Is it a contributor to pelvic floor dysfunction or not? Do we benefit from it? Do we not? And more recently, there was one study that was looking at return to running guidelines. So there's a physiotherapist in Ireland, Grania Donnelly, who put together a series of return to run guidelines. And in those guidelines, there is a time, so around 4 to 6 months postpartum. So ideally we've met the time requirement. And then we have like a series of prerequisite exercises that help determine our capacity to manage the loads and demands of running. And if we can do, either all or the majority of those well, with good control, no symptoms, no exacerbation of anything, then, okay, now we start to add running back in. And it's, in my opinion, a gradual return to running. It doesn't mean that if you ran 10K before you got pregnant, now you've passed the time and you've done some prerequisites. I would not say go back to 10K. I'd say let's do a walk run, kind of as if we're first learning how to run again. And then there's other people that say, well, the likelihood of us developing challenges can also be indicated of, did we continue to run while we're pregnant? Did we have any, what type of birth did we have? Where, there's all sorts of other factors that we need to consider. There's some other research from a physio, Laurie Forner in Australia, who she was looking at pelvic floor symptoms for runners and high impact. And she was actually comparing prolapse and incontinence symptoms with runners versus heavy lifters, so CrossFit athletes. And it was actually the runners who were experiencing more challenges. And actually in hers, it was looking at anal incontinence as one of the more bothersome symptoms that people were reporting. So that's not to say that don't do CrossFit or don't return to running. It just means that there's fundamental biomechanical changes that have happened over the series of 9 months. And we've had then a birth that we need to consider all of the, like what type of birth it was. And there's an element of recovery and retraining that we benefit from, I believe. And it's a gradual progression back to, rather than waiting for that quote unquote 6-week green light and then going from 0 to 60.
Yeah, I really love that advice that you said about the run walk approach. That could be really helpful to some mums so that they don't feel like they have to cut it out completely.
Right.
But yeah, it's just one of those things that there's a lot of contributing factors, like you said. Now, this is a little bit off topic, but it's something that I really wanted to ask you for our viewers, the mums here. So how does pelvic floor issues affect sex and feeling sexy?
I wouldn't say that's off topic at all. It's part of our pelvic floor plays a direct role in our responsiveness for our response to sex. Yep. Whether we experience pleasure, whether we can accommodate something coming into our vagina, our pelvic floor is directly associated with. So when we're talking earlier about muscles that may have more tension than what would be considered optimal, that can sometimes interfere with our ability to orgasm, with our ability to experience even just any pleasure leading up to orgasm. It can also interfere with our ability to accommodate a finger or a toy or a penis, because it can be, again, it's kind of restricted, and that can definitely play a role. So again, working on that relaxation can be beneficial for all of those things. Yeah. On the other side, if somebody is experiencing laxity, that can also interfere with sensation and capacity to experience pleasure. So it wouldn't necessarily have as much challenge with something going in, but maybe we don't have as much sensation of something being in there. So that can sometimes hinder our sensation or our enjoyment of again, intercourse type sex. Yeah. And the other piece that I will say on that is people who experience pelvic floor dysfunction, like incontinence and especially prolapse, are also often mentally not 100% present. So they're thinking, can my partner smell it? This is if they're partnered. Can my partner smell it? Can they feel it? Am I leaking? Are they going to see it? Are they going to be grossed out? So they're kind of, they're preoccupied with what's happening and what the partner may be believing or seeing or what have you. So you're not necessarily completely in the moment. And orgasm is really beneficial for the pelvic floor. It's kind of like an involuntary set of Kegels in a way. It promotes blood flow and circulation. Pelvic floor exercise helps promote blood flow and circulation. Doing Kegel exercises while you're incorporating self-pleasure. So if you don't have a partner, or even if you do and you're just doing some self-pleasure, doing Kegels can be beneficial there as well, can heighten that sensation while also working to strengthen that group of muscles. So sex is really beneficial for the pelvic floor, and it's kind of a biopsychosocial thing. We have to understand all of the factors, again, that can influence the emotional side, the physical side, the connection side. And it's, laxity in the muscles or too much tone. We have to kind of find that balance in the muscles to optimize their function and responsiveness as well.
So we can certainly make it a bit more of a fun way to strengthen our pelvic floor as well. Doesn't have to be all like a chore sort of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you so much for all your insights today, Kim. You've been absolutely amazing. I know that you have a special gift that you would like to share a little bit about, so just let you do that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me very much. And I'd love to give away a free copy of, it was the second book that I wrote, and it was sort of a collaborative approach or a collaborative effort. I wanted to put together a very easily digestible book that covered sort of the three main phases that we may go through pregnancy, motherhood, parenthood, and menopause. We're all going to go through menopause, even if we don't experience childbirth. Yeah. So even if we're not a parent, but so the book is really kind of covering what the pelvic floor is, what the three main life stages are, what are some of the more common signs and symptoms, and then what we can do about it. But I also brought in a bunch of different pelvic health professionals from around the world and had them offer their insight and their top tips so that we can kind of have a more global approach. But you could also maybe say, okay, well, I don't live in Vancouver, Canada, where Kim lives, and maybe there's a practitioner in there who they can learn from who's in New York City or who's in Adelaide or who's in, wherever part of the world. So I wanted to make it really a collaborative effort because I do believe that we benefit from having a village for our health and for our pelvic health. And so I wanted to bring in a bunch of different people. So I'm going to give everybody a free copy of that to have a little read.
Thank you so much. That is a must read. So the link will be below this video, and it's very kind of you to put that together with so much collaboration, because I think that can just give people just more advice than just, when you combine the advice, it's quite incredible what you can get out of it. So definitely a must read, this one.
Thank you so much.
So thank you guys, girls, I should say, all for watching today, and please be sure to stay tuned for tomorrow's video, and we'll see you then.
Thanks so much.